Hi, everyone. Hadley here with Hillcrest Tennis. We're at the indoor courts today, and we're going to be having a courtside discussion about pre-match preparations and some of the things that we can rehearse as we prepare for our matches for our USTA leagues this summer. So we're going to just jump right into it. A lot of this would be helpful to watch the discussion that we had about sabotage tactics and some of our pre-match routines that we've discussed in the past. So I'd really encourage you to go back and watch some of those videos. It has a lot of good information as to routines and tactics that can help your match preparation. But today we're going to be talking about patterns of play and some other topics. So here we go. We're going to jump right in. So if you think about how we are wired, we have hardware, which is like our strokes and patterns of play. And then we also have our software, which is like our mental and emotional makeup that we have for match play. And I like to think of it as if you are, if you're an actor, for example, and you have to go in and you have to be in character for a certain period of time. We'll say 2 hours, because that's about as long as a match lasts. And so think about, if you're preparing for a certain role in a play or in a movie, you have to rehearse and you have to be practicing certain lines, certain behaviors, those kinds of things, and to be able to carry it out for a period of time takes a lot of practice and rehearsal. So it's the same thing with match play. You come out here to the courts and you practice certain patterns, you practice forehand, you practice all of your hardware components of your game. Certain things are neglected, such as the emotional and the mental aspect of the game. But overall, you come out here and you rehearse and you rehearse and you rehearse. And then when match play comes, that's when it's time to perform. And sometimes our performances are not, we haven't rehearsed enough. And so then it becomes erratic. And that's when it kind of starts to snowball into a mess. And so some of the things that I like to think about as I'm preparing for a match, and especially if you have if you know that you're playing in the near future, for example, like a tournament or league, or that you have a big match coming up, the things that I like to rehearse are in regards to the hardware aspect of things. I like to rehearse my favorite patterns of play. And so I know, and when I was in college and when I was playing, on the national level, I would always have a note card, and I would always have the patterns of play that I knew that I could deploy in key situations and in moments when I needed to deploy my best shots on the big points. And so I would always read over those on changeovers, because it would help. It's kind of rehearsing those lines, and when you're preparing for that role, seeing that note card so that you can remember those certain patterns of play. Because as we play, we have that adrenaline, we have our opponent, a lot going on, and if we can refocus our brain and keep our emotional intelligence in check, then our body is able to think, and we're able to think clearly. So having so having those patterns of play written on your card. And so we'll discuss those patterns of play now. So really what you'd like to think about, what are your strengths? What do you do best? And how can you create patterns of play around your strengths? So I will give you an example. So I love my forehand and I love my serve, and I like to dictate play. If you're going to look over here, so the middle of the court, I like to dictate play in the middle of the court. So right about here. Yep, right in here. Okay, I like to dictate play in the middle of the court with my forehand. And so the patterns of play that I would typically use is I would hit 2 strong forehands cross court, anticipating that there would be a short ball to the middle of the court. And then I would either take my backhand slice cross court, or I would hit my forehand to the other direction. So those are the kinds of patterns of play that we're talking about. So number 1 would be a serve pattern for the deuce and the ad side. So for example, on the deuce side, my most favorite serve is to hit a big serve down the tee and to get the short ball in the middle of the court. And then, so the short ball right in here, because if you can hit a big serve down the tee to their backhand, which is their weaker side, and they don't have as much angle. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, one moment. Sorry, I'm just doing my...
Happy's doing a live stream for us right now.
Hello. So anyway, so the serve pattern, so down the tee, and then trying to create a short ball into the middle of the court. All right. And then on the ad side, we'll be discussing, or I would like to, my pattern of play would be to hit a kicker serve out wide to the backhand side. And then I would also like to wait for that middle ball to my forehand, and then I would take that forehand cross court. So those are the kinds of patterns that you should be thinking about. How can you play into your strength? How can you get your opponent to play into your strength? Okay. Number 2 would be the return patterns that you like to do on a first or second serve. So you're thinking about what does your pattern of play look like on the first serve? Is it just a nice deep ball cross court or to the middle of the box? And then on the second serve, would it be using that second serve as an approach shot to be aggressive and to come forward? So those are those kinds of patterns of play for the return. And then what are also your favorite rally patterns? I discussed those earlier, hitting a heavy deep ball cross court to cross court, and then taking that shorter ball to in the middle of the court to the open court. And so creating those patterns of play, again, that dictate play with your strengths. All right. And then number 4 would be your favorite short ball option. So as an example, I discussed how I like to dictate play in the middle of the court. If you think about it, you have so many options when it's in the middle of the court. And typically the problem is a lot of people miss that easier ball. They've done all of the hard work and then they miss that easier ball because they don't realize that they have maybe too many options, right? And so they just need to realize what they like to do on that shot, and then they do it every time. They execute that every time. So for example, if you get that middle short ball, you want to put that, for me, I like to hit that hard ball, and it's going to be a winner every time. Some people like to create a chip shot or a drop shot. Others like to slice it and kind of angle it off. So there's lots of different options that you can create, but knowing what you like to do and knowing what you can do on big points, that's the key. And number 5, what is your favorite net rushing pattern? And as an example, my favorite is to take a swinging volley out of the air. So if my opponent is lobbing, I love to take that ball out of the air, swinging volley, and then come and finish off the point as a volley at an angle outside the court or off the court. Okay, so those are kind of those are the patterns of play that you should have as like your solid foundation. You know that you can execute those well. I was watching a YouTube on somebody was talking about these patterns of play and how this academy was lined up. They had 8 courts of everybody doing the same pattern but executing it every single time, and that pattern was a high deep ball to create that short ball, and then the other person would come and take it as a swinging volley and put it away. And so, those kinds of patterns, you practice those over and over and over again. Again, going back to that analogy of that rehearsal, getting ready for your performance, creating those patterns, and then it becomes second nature, and then you don't have to think about it. And then all you need to do, the whole idea is that you don't have to think about it, and then you execute them without even thinking about it. Okay, so that goes back to that hardware piece, part of your pre-match preparation, and now we're going to kind of slowly shift into the software aspect of your pre-match warm-up. And part of your warm-up it's your job to manage your adrenaline. So whether you need to pump yourself up or if you need to calm yourself down, get your legs moving. You should do some running, some jogging, some jump ropes, those kinds of things to manage that adrenaline, to keep that in check so that you're balanced. Again, and talking about your hardware, you should be warming up your secondary stroke. So you have if you think about it in a color palette, you have your primary colors, and if you only warm up those primary strokes, that's great, but it's warming up those secondary strokes, so like your slice and your lobs, and hitting those shots so that you're warmed up for those. I like to say, your sabotage tactics, or warming up all of your tools in your box so that you're ready and everything is prepped and ready to go. And few final notes. Be sure that your hydration and your nutrition is in check, because any slight variation in that will make a huge difference. Okay. And we're, again, rehearsing those patterns of play for specific players that you're playing. Maybe that day you're playing a moonballer, or you're playing somebody that rushes the net, but rehearsing the patterns of play that will help you dictate play against that specific player, so that you're not caught off guard. And then again, rehearsing that emotional software. So how are you going to handle certain situations? How are you going to handle the heat? How are you going to handle any variable that's going to come in? Rehearsing those in your mind, and how are you going to react, and how are you going to manage it as it comes up into a match. So anyway, I hope that these pre-match preparations shed some light on some things that might help in your matches. And anyway, our Hillcrest teams have started out really strong this USTA season. Extremely proud of all of our members that have worked so hard and invested a lot of time and hard work into their tennis. Keep it going. Stay Hillcrest strong. Thank you for all of your support. Come down, play some tennis. We are happy to see you, and have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back here next week. Thank you.